Hey y'all. Hey y'all. How you doing? Y'all, it's 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. Welcome to the Glow Up Is. I'm excited about all of the things that God is doing in our lives, me and your lives. Today I kind of wanted to talk about God's grace and his mercy. And God has really been having me to really focus on life this week, right? But not just life and all of its different things, right? That comes at us, right? Because in times of distress, times of grief, times of um, internal things, right? That we go through, we still find ourselves, right? Still seeking, even when we're lost. So today I kind of wanted to encourage somebody on today, man, and encourage myself as well, because when I'm talking to y'all, I'm talking to me too, right? And so first and foremost, I want to give honor to the Lord, because He allowed us to see another day. This song has literally been in my spirit, but I had felt a real tug at it today because somebody else had started playing it right before this, and I was just like, Lord, I said, God, you always, come in right on time. But the song is Donna McClurkin, Great Is Your Mercy. And so when I sit there and I think about God's grace, I think about all of his, all of the things that he has done, right? Even in spite of, um, as of lately, right? I have literally been dealing with a lot of grief. Um, Even though sometimes, we try our hardest, right? To mask it as much as we can, right? And so the thing is that when you take a loss, right? We try to deal with it, we try to handle it as much as we can. We try to sometimes drown ourselves in work, right? To take our minds off of those things versus dealing with them. And so I'm constantly reminded, right, on a daily basis that God's grace is sufficient for my life. And so I wanted to get on here, man, on today to remind somebody else too that God's grace is sufficient for our life. Um, the crazy part is, right, I was in the Word this week, and me and one of my good friends, um, we were really talking about God, and I had kind of like been intentional, with sending different scriptures and stuff like with her, you know what I'm saying? So me and her, we would give each other perspective and share those different things, right? Because at the end of the day, right, the glow up doesn't just, it's not just about a podcast, right? It's about building, right? And it's about growing, right, to glow. Like literally, that's what we do at the Glow Up Is. So it's not just a podcast for me, right? This is a lifestyle, right? So every single day I want to be intentional with trying to ensure that God's grace, right, that I'm not taking advantage of his grace, but I'm living in his grace, right? And so it's a total different thing when you start really living in his grace, even in spite of everything that's going on around you. And so this week we were kind of like into, like, God had given me Luke chapter chapter 15, and it was the parable of the lost son, right? And it's so simple because it's like a familiar passage, right? But what had ended up getting to me this time about this lost son, right? It wasn't necessarily about the lost son, but it was about the son who was still there, in perspective with everything, right? And I think that sometimes we don't see the things, or we don't recognize the people that are still here, even in our grief or even in our loss, right? Time is so precious, and we talk about this a lot, right? Time is one of those things where we literally have to be intentional with our time, because we can't get that time back. Time is one of the biggest things that we invest, whether or not if it's you giving your job 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week, whatever, right? Whatever it is that you do, right? You're investing that time, and you can't get that time back. Yes, your job pays you, right? But at the end of the day, right, there is no amount of time, no amount of value, right? The value of your time is so precious, and it means so much, right? To have it valued as well. So Go with me into the book of Luke, chapter 11. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I thought it was so dope, right? How God had literally allowed me to see this thing totally different this time. And even to my friend, like it was like eye opening for both of us, right? Because sometimes, right, we sometimes can just miss things, right, the first time that we see things. Like the first time we hear a story, it's just like, okay, I get it. It's about the lost son and he came back, and father of sons, right? And one of the sons decided to just go and do whatever he wanted to do, right? And then the other son stayed, and then the lost son literally came back, and the father literally wrapped his arms around him, had the rings, the robes, the finest things, right? Just go and give it to him, right? Wrap him in this love, give him my love, And so the biggest thing about it is, right, and this that I want us to kind of focus on is in this verse 25, if you go. And again, this is the parable of the lost son, which is Luke 15, verse 11. So read that in your own leisure, but I'm going to start at verse 25 because I kind of want to focus on the older son. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened cow because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened cow for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Um, it's so funny, right? Because sometimes, right, when people, and I'm going to be on death a little bit and speaking on grief, just simply because grief has taken a huge part of me, right? And even though sometimes for me, right, I grieve in different ways and I'm unlearning habits, right? And I literally try to rest in God and I literally try to drown myself in work. But today was just one of those days where I could not avoid, right? I couldn't really get to it, the root of it. But I also was reminded, even in this moment, just like this son, right? Because God, I'm like, God, I've been doing everything that you've asked me to do. I've been honoring you. I've been in the word more. I've been bringing you up in conversation. And it wasn't the simple fact that God says, Toya, it's not that you're not spending time with me. It's not that you're not being obedient, right? What I need for you to do is not to put your focus on those things uh, that you're going to actually lose. I don't need you to get attached, right, to people. I need for you to stay so consumed in me and to allow the spirit to activate, right? Because this is a real thing. Sometimes what happens is, right, we get so wrapped up in our emotions and we get so attached to death. We get so attached to those that we love, but not thinking that they're never going to come back, right? But the true meaning of it all, right? Because the father literally said, for he was lost, right? And he said that he was dead. And the crazy thing about it is, right, there's so many of us who have not actually passed on yet in the physical death. But there are literally people walking dead right now that are around us, right? And sometimes what happens is that those same people that we are around, they can't speak life over us, right? They can't cover us, but yet we're still trying to, maneuver through the best way that we can. That job, it may be a dead situation that's at the job. There may be some other things, right, that are playing roles, right, that are dead. And so what I'm saying is, right, is that we cannot be so consumed by the things of this world, because the things of this world is not going to last. But it is what we do for God that is going to last. It is what we get attached to in God, right? Because even at the end of the day, right, when I sit back and I think about my life, y'all, and this thing is really real for me, right? When I sit back and I think about my life and I think about the purpose, because when I talk to y'all, I promise you, I'm talking to myself, right? I'm so intentional with God that I want to make sure that everything that is connected to me is connected to God in some way, shape, or form, whether or not if it's friendships, whether like you got to be able to know God. I don't want you to just know of God. I want you to know God. Like there should be something, right? Or either there should be something that we can connect with in some way, right? Because at the end of the day, like I don't want to be in dead situations anymore. I don't want dead partnerships. I don't want dead connections. I want purpose people. I don't want dead people around me, right? I don't mind being a living light and I don't mind showing love. But even with that, right? Sometimes we can focus on all of those other things, right? That we're not setting our own selves free because God is like, listen, I want you to give it to me. And sometimes, y'all, we don't even know how to give God exactly our issues or our problems because he's the one who's able to fix it. And I know that therapy is a good thing, but it's also God's job to fix the issues. And when he says cast all his cares upon him because he cares for